Hi, everyone. I'm Elysabeth Alfano, CEO of VegTech Invest. It's wonderful to be back with you on the Plant-Based Business Hour. I feel like I have been away. I've been at so many conferences. I'm leaving for another conference, this one a financial conference, speaking on food systems transformation. But I've already been to so many conferences this winter that I'm looking forward to spring, where things will calm down just a little bit before I do a couple more financial conferences in June. As we look to the crazy world that it is and the topsy-turviness that we have in our everyday news cycle, I thought I would bring on someone from Canada to represent, show our love, show how much we love Canada, and most importantly, bring on a food systems transformation from the viewpoint of Canada and the world. With that in mind, I bring on today's guest, Dr. Let's hope I pronounce this correctly, Sylvain Charlebois from Dal
Very
University.
nice. Very
Ooh,
nice.
I should have started the podcast with Bonjour tout le monde. But in fact, no, I have not. You are not in Montreal. You are not.
I'm originally from Montreal. Yes,
Okay.
I'm a francophone, but now I live with my family in beautiful Halifax, Nova Scotia, which
Oh my
is
word.
about 8 hours north of Boston. Yeah.
And how cold is it today? Almost April 1st.
It's minus 2 degrees Celsius. So
No.
forgive me, I don't have the number in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cold. 2 degrees
Yeah.
Celsius. You're looking at about 36 degrees
And
Fahrenheit.
what's the weather where
Give or
you
take.
are?
Oh, I am in Mexico and it is a balmy 78 and breezy and sunny. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's dreamy.
I was in Mexico a month ago, so I can appreciate your temperature for sure.
My surroundings and my happiness. Yes,
Yeah,
this is all
exactly.
understandable. And it's germane today that we are talking about Canada and maybe even Mexico as we look at the world in front of us. So, but for most people who don't know you, let's first take a step back. And if you could tell us what you're doing at Dalhousie University, and let's hope I'm pronouncing that right as well.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes,
no,
and
absolutely. Yeah, it's I've been here for about 10 years. I used to be at the University of Guelph in Ontario for 7 years, and then before that in Saskatchewan for about 7 years. So I'm a full professor and director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab here at Dal. We have a team of about 15 people working on different projects. We're looking at biotechnologies. Of course, we're social scientists, so we always try to understand the impact of different technologies on the economy. For example, food waste is a big theme these days for us. Not consumer food waste, but up the chain food waste as well.
yes.
We're also we've been looking at the performance of different countries around food innovation as well, comparing Canada with other countries around the world.
Mm.
That's a 5-year project with a consulting firm called MNP. So yeah, lots and lots on the go. Of course, we're academics. We tend to publish, but we also, like you are, on the road a bit to share our information. We do have a website. You can just go on the Dalhousie website, and our reports are available for free in English and French.
Okay, wonderful. We'll be sure to get that to everyone. Let me ask you then, as you are senior director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab, and as you say, you're studying what bio-industrials are doing perhaps to the Canadian economy or maybe global trade, and you're also
Yep.
looking at food innovation around the world. Maybe we'll start with Canada. What shifts are you seeing in food systems transformation specifically, both with food innovation or let's say biotech innovation that's impacting food? What's happening in Canada that you're seeing is really taking hold and taking root?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, we're still looking at a very active agenda around different cultivars to increase yields. Of course, it's all about yields. It's also about dealing with different climatic conditions, hard conditions, as you know. In different parts of North America, there are areas where there's just no moisture at all, and
Yeah.
so obviously there's demand for genetically modified grains or crops that can actually survive very harsh conditions. So there's been a very clear focus on that overall.
Mhm.
Of course, when you look at lentils and pulses in general, that is a growing segment as well. So as you know, Canada is one of the largest exporters of pulses in the world. Thanks to AGT, which is led by a great friend of mine, Murad Al-Kahid, and he's originally from Turkey, but he's a Canadian, and he built this amazing empire called AGT out of Saskatchewan, and exports a lot of lentils, chickpeas, peas to the rest of the world, and it's been incredible, and that really has brought, as you know, when you start building this pull effect, farmers follow. So that's kind of what happened in the prairies in Canada, is where you saw AGT really get more farmers to get into pulses and grow more and rely on these crops to actually make money. And of course, here we are looking at a very democratic sort of protein play. That's how I call it.
Yeah.
Moving away from meat a little bit and into vegetable protein. So those are the kinds of things. So innovation is very much about crop yields, of course, but it's almost mostly about distribution and processing. There are several new crushing plants being built right now to basically do the value add on site in Canada in particular. And frankly, I think that's going to help the industry overall.
Oh my gosh, so much to unpack there. I didn't want to interrupt our dear professor, so I'll go all the way to the beginning of his statement saying, according to the United Nations Environment Program, 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions attributed to food waste. And he's right, that food waste is coming up chain in the supply chain. So it's interesting to see that this is a focus for Canada. I don't know that I knew that Canada was the world's largest grower and exporter of peas. I didn't know of all pulses.
Well, I don't quote me on that. I know we're one of the largest exporters. We're a big player. Yeah, we're a big player. And as you know, we don't consume most of it. We just chip it away.
Right. So much land and not that many people, about half the United States, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, the U.S. is a big market for us, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, with what's going on right now with tariffs, obviously, it's going to make our product a little bit less competitive, unfortunately, to the U.S.
So hold on to that thought. Believe me, we're getting into tariffs. Just hold on, babe. Okay, we're coming back to that. But with pulses, for those who may not know, so some of the benefits of pulses, if you're continuing to monocrop, let's say corn, alfalfa, et cetera, for animals, you're depleting the soil, but cover crops like legumes and pulses can really help to regenerate the soil. So there's a lot of value to soil regeneration in using pulses. Also, pulses, legumes, beans, they have fiber. So your meat protein's not going to have any fiber. It's going to have lots of cholesterol, but no fiber. So here with pulses, you're going to get all that protein, but you're not going to get the cholesterol, and you are going to get fiber. People always ask me, as someone who doesn't eat meat, well, where do you get your protein? And I always say, well, where do you get your fiber? You probably don't even know, So I'm not worried about protein deficiency. I'm worried about fiber deficiency. That's what's going to lead to heart disease, diabetes, other lifestyle diseases.
Absolutely.
So pulses have a lot going for them. And then they're wildly inexpensive compared to their meat counterparts in terms of getting protein. Meat's going to take all that land, all that water. They're going to need all those crops. They're this very expensive middleman. Whereas a pulse, this is why you can buy a bag of, black beans for $1.39 or something, and you're going to have
very
beans
cheap.
And rice for, very cheap. You're going to give that protein that has fiber and low cholesterol or no cholesterol, I believe, right to people. So very efficient. The food goes to people. The food doesn't go to animals, and then we wait and use more resources, and then finally we feed people. This goes directly to people. So a lot to be said here. Putting Canada, basically, now we'll get to economics and tariffs. We'll get to economics and tariffs. So putting Canada in a great place, I would think, for a world that is increasingly needing pulses. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we never had a champion before. That's the thing, and that's why I give a lot of credit to Murad, because I see him as the Wayne Gretzky of pulses for Canada, because we never really had a strategy until when he came along. He was a public servant. He was working for the Saskatchewan government And at the age of 25, 26, he saw an opportunity and wrote a business plan to create AGT. And his business is now worth about, I don't know, $3 billion now, $4 billion. So he's done very well. And of course, a lot of farmers actually bought into his model. And that's why, I mean, Canada is a leading country in that area. So, because as you know, farmers are price takers. They don't like to take risks, and
Yeah.
so it's always been about wheat and barley and canola and the boring stuff. But now there's more excitement, more choices given to farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because ultimately more choices for farmers means more choices for consumers.
Yep.
And you do have to have farmer buy-in, or you're not going to go anywhere. So your friend from AGT is welcome on this podcast anytime. I'll make a formal invitation for him. But I think it's a very exciting time. Now, we've espoused all of the benefits of legumes and pulses, but is there a pull, or is it all a push? Are you having to tell people how great this is and why they need it? Or are you seeing a pull from around the world for Canada's resources here?
In so in terms of the world, there is absolutely a pull for sure. Canada, it's hit and miss, but for the world, absolutely, there's more demand for our products for sure. Yeah, and prices are pretty decent for farmers. I can't give you quotes right now. I haven't looked at them in a while, but prices are pretty interesting for farmers, which obviously is an easy way to incentivize them to grow more.
Yes. Yeah. And oddly, Canada has the growing conditions more than other places. I believe peas and beans and legumes need cold weather. I might have that wrong, but
colder
weather. Okay.
Yeah, colder weather. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't need a whole lot of moisture either. And so so there's less worries when you grow these crops. And so, yeah, that's why they're getting more popular. But again, it's always harder to get farmers to convert and change. And so it's little by little, but over time, you can see that really AGT has been quite successful in converting many acres into acres to serve them. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. The farmers. That's wonderful. Before we do get into the trade war and how that might be impacting Canada, you did mention GMO. And so as the podcast host, I can't let that go by without me saying, like,
I kind of did it on purpose, because I know. Yeah, I did it on purpose. But I mean, as you know, there's a lot of money invested in biotechnologies in Canada. You know this,
yeah,
and in America as well. So yes, absolutely, we're not against it, but yeah. So go ahead. Fair. It's your podcast. You can ask me anything.
So give me your take on GMO.
So I think, honestly, I actually do think that that they're empowering for the agriculture in general. I think they're misunderstood. That's the problem with genetic engineering. I don't think we've done a proper job. I've actually written a few case studies on this issue, starting with a week spent at Monsanto before they were actually bought out. And I remember interviewing the CEO of Monsanto with my colleague who was a plant scientist, and I asked him, why is Monsanto so hated? Like, Monsanto was the most hated company in the world before he got bought out. And he said, well, the science is on our side. And his answer stuck with me. Basically, I said, wow, that's just the most short-sighted answer I've ever heard from a CEO, because and as you know this, even if science is on your side, doesn't mean that you can set a moral contract between the product and the customer. And that's what they missed, and they're still paying for it to this day. And it's even worse now, I would say. So on the one side, I do think that it's done wonders for agriculture, but on the other, there's a broken contract between supply and demand, and that's why I've always been a big fan of labeling. I would just label the thing and let consumers decide. And in North America, we've been resistant to that philosophy, whereas in Europe, they've embraced that. They've said, yeah, let consumers decide. And I'm more on the European side of things for that one.
Well, I was going to bring up Europe in this conversation because they're so anti-GMO. Now, they do label, but the consumer still isn't educated on it. So it's labeled, but I don't know if that label helps them. I'll just clarify for the listeners here, GMO can be nefarious. It sure can be. It's like medicine can be nefarious. The media, the social media, journalists, newspapers, etc., can be nefarious. They aren't by definition nefarious.
That's
And
right.
the same is true here. It depends on what you do with the GMO.
That's right.
And also, I would like to add, regardless of your feelings and how they come down on the subject, you are already eating GMO, because as we have more and more droughts in California, one of the largest producers of food to the world, that is possible during these droughts because of drought resistant crops. And that only happens because of something like GMO. So I don't want to praise it, but I just want to say it's really neutral and it depends on how you use it. That's how I see it.
The communication gap has led to bizarre initiatives like the non-GMO project.
I know, I don't even
we
get it.
we have bottled water
Yeah.
with a logo of non-GMO it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And why? Because there's this communication gap.
Yeah. Well, then it becomes a political free-for-all with the communication gap. Then politics can get in and widen that gap and take advantage of that delta. Oh, it's all economics of some sort. So let's get to the economics.
And of course, as you know, just to finish off on the genetic engineering, of course, we in Canada we approved last year genetic editing, and so that's why this is not over. And frankly, we're going in with a highly fearful public, and it's not fair. I mean, and that's why I think it's important for people to have choice, so informed choice, so they can actually decide what they want to eat and know what they're actually eating every time they buy a product.
I think it's hard the further and further you get from your food. So when you grow your own food, you don't have to have a philosophical discussion about it because you planted the potato and it grew and you ate it, you know, but now you have to, it's like a intellectual debate of what you're eating and do you understand it and what's happened to it. And it's an unfortunate place to be in. And I don't know that we're going to turn that corner.
After my case study on Monsanto, I was presenting in Austria. The case study, it was actually In the Belly of the Beast. That was the name of the case study, by the way, because I spent a week at Monsanto, and that place, I don't know if you've been to St. Louis, but that place looks like a university campus. 16,000 employees. Of 16,000, 7,000 have PhDs.
Oh gosh. I mean,
it's just a crazy town. It's just, and they're going, why is the world hating us? I mean, we're doing the work. But when I presented in Austria, the house was packed, 400 people, and I could feel the hatred towards the case study. People like, how can you possibly spend a week at Monsanto? That place is evil. And it was very interesting because in Austria, of course, it's the organic kingdom of Europe. I lived there for a year. It's the organic kingdom of the world. And I think my son he's 6'4" today, and actually gained 8 inches in a year or something. He grew like hell. So I'm a big believer in organic.
Oh my gosh. Well, interesting about Austria, and interesting how, I mean, we can't be educated about everything all the time because the world has become so detailed in the knowing, but it's amazing how vitriolic people feel.
Yeah. Pretty much. Absolutely.
And when they don't really know much about Monsanto, probably, except that it's
they don't.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
Interesting. Okay, so tariffs. Now we must get to this.
You probably talk about tariffs a lot in your line of work, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, and I'm also like, should we talk about it? Because tomorrow will change. I mean, it's been so volatile, not just the news cycle, but also the markets. That the tariffs of today get postponed tomorrow, and all this. And generally, if you come from a business background, then tariffs are bad. They just hurt everyone in all business. It just slows up all business. So with that in mind, U.S. importing a lot of the agricultural products from Canada. And do you think agriculture will get a pass? Because you don't want to make it tougher for people to eat. So do you think agriculture will just be devoid of tariffs, or how do you think this will go?
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, to be honest. And I must say, like as of tomorrow, China, I'm not sure if you knew this, but China is actually, we started the war against China back in October for EVs and batteries. We're building a $50 billion sector in Canada. We decided, along with Joe Biden, to put tariffs on imports, and China decided to retaliate as of tomorrow against canola, all grains, pulses, everything, hogs, and seafood and lobster, all that stuff. So China is aiming at food, clearly, and because it can. Will America do the same thing? I hope not, because as you know, I mean, 25% on food is huge.
Huge, huge, huge to do to the consumer. But
Yeah.
hold on, you say China does it because they can, and I would say the opposite. China has no leeway to mess around with food. They can't feed themselves. 1.4 billion people, only 7% arable land. Arable land is the land that you can use to grow things. Only 7% of China has farmable land. That's not going to feed 1.4
Well,
billion people.
they actually did buy a lot of inventories from Brazil
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
America. I must, like,
You mean
they
land?
were prepared. Oh yeah, they were prepared. So
What
I'm
do you
not
mean
too
land, or do you mean like supplies?
supplies,
Oh,
supplies. Yeah.
oh.
And so they forward bought quite a bit, and so they're fine for a while. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's going to hurt our economy. It's going to hurt our farmers. And so
Mm.
it's going to hurt our harvesters where I am in Halifax, because obviously the fish and seafood sector is very, very important. And so there's America now on April 2nd. Who knows what's going to happen? But I must say, this morning I had meetings with some companies, food companies in manufacturing, and they're already hurting because the uncertainty around tariffs is
Yeah,
just hurting. You're a forward-looking person. You're an investor.
yeah.
Like, how can you possibly? I
It's
don't
so
know how
stressful.
your world must be really complicated right now because of what's going on.
It's so stressful. It's incredibly stressful. And, every day it's different. So every time you think you have a strategy, it just changes the next day. I mean, a lot of what we do focuses on innovation. So it's very forward looking, even forward looking beyond the tariffs, because it's the innovation that's going to take hold 2-3 years from now.
Yeah.
So in a way, we have a reprieve because we're not looking at, commodities trading today. We're looking at the innovations for food system transformation of tomorrow. But still, it's nerve wracking, and it makes people lose confidence in the sector as a whole because it's
And
so
you
damaging.
already need to be patient to invest in the sector in the first place.
Yes,
So,
yes,
oh yeah,
yes.
it's terrible.
But I think all what these tariffs, and this is what I'm trying to get at, maybe is a little bit more of the philosophy, is I think tariffs are only going to exacerbate how unresilient the global food supply system is. And this is going to force
Mm,
lots of domestic spending on innovation. So China spending on, Canada spending on innovation in Canada, US spending on innovation in the US. So like, as an example, the Department of Defense is spending 35% of its R&D grant budget from the bioindustrial manufacturing program under Biden is on food innovation. Now, you would think Department of Defense, why would they spend 1/3 of their money on food? Because food is an issue of national security, because
of
we're seeing
course.
it come up with tariffs.
Yeah.
So
I
I
didn't know
don't.
that the National Defense actually spent so much on food. Like, how did they spend it?
So let's talk about this. So it's 35% of one program. So the program is called the Distributed Bioindustrial Manufacturing Program. And 12 of their 34 grants went to food innovation around sustainable oil, non-egg fermenting egg whites and eggs without the chicken, fermenting proteins out of fungi and microbes, and I believe it was sustainable sugars. But
Okay.
12 of the company, oh, and some manufacturing, some university manufacturing. As you were saying, you talked about the crushing of the pulses and that upstream supply chain. So then they invested in some of the manufacturing behind these fermentation processes to scale them up.
Right.
So though 12 of the 34, so 35% of that program going towards food innovation. Now, bioindustrials, I would have originally thought from the Department of Defense, it would have been chemicals. And 1/3 was spent on chemicals. 1/3 was spent on materials, and 1/3 was spent on food innovation. And that
Mm.
tells you, from the perspective of the Department of Defense, food is an issue of
Of
defense.
national security. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
national
Yeah.
security. So, um, you can't really get elected if you can't feed people. And if you're going to start a trade war where you're no longer exchanging food, then you better make your own food and be self-sufficient. No country is. So this is going to push innovation spending at a rapid speed. What do you think about this?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. You know what? When you put it that way, absolutely. I mean, I think both you and a lot of people actually believe in trades, believe in a collaborative, cooperative based order.
Yeah, well, not
Apparently,
this
some people in Washington
administration.
don't believe that anymore.
No.
Uh, so it's tough. It's tough to. I've been trying to understand what President Trump is trying to do. I think I know what he's trying to do. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's going to work, but he was elected, and I think in the meantime we're going to probably see like a lot of countries just trying to float by
Yeah.
until we get to someplace else. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
Well, I was going to ask if you could elaborate on what you think his strategy is, because I'm not sure.
do you
What do you
know
think?
what? Do you have an idea, or you have no?
I think it. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I would just say straight bullying. That chaos.
Oh no, beyond the style, like yes, the style is clearly. I think the jury's pretty clear on that one, but I'm just focusing on the strategy. Like, what is he? What's the end game for him? And what is he trying to do for America? It's America first, so I don't think he cares right now. I mean, I'm in Canada. I went to Mexico where you were. Obviously, this is not about Mexico or Canada or Europe or
No.
anyone else. It's about America first. So, what about America? What is he trying to do for America? And I think it's really about recapitalizing the market. It's about devaluating the dollar, probably lowering asset values, probably building the American dream for a greater number of people by keeping interest rates lower. I mean, how do you do that with higher tariffs?
Yeah,
Like, how
that
do you
would be
keep
the opposite.
inflation low with
Yeah.
higher tariffs?
No, this is the opposite direction, though. If you're talking about like recapitalizing the American dream, that's not what he's doing here. This is,
I think that's what he wants to do.
but none of this would point to that,
No,
right? No,
exactly.
yeah, no, I don't think
I
that
don't
this.
think I don't think it's going to work, but I think that's what he's aiming for.
I think he's trying to destabilize other nations, and in destabilizing other nations, make America more in demand, or more kowtowing down to America, more subservient to what we want, to have better terms for us in our
But
trade.
using tariffs to actually pay down debt and reduce taxes is that's at the basis of his strategy, is exactly that, and I don't think it's going to work. I mean, I can't see it happening. I mean,
No, I can't see it happening
your
either,
debt
because
is too big, and you really need to, because people are just going to move away from America for a while, and they're
yeah,
just
which is
not going to
only
trade.
that's not gonna help your debt. That's
No.
gonna take it in the opposite direction.
So you want to reduce the size of government as well with Doge. That's the other element, and so that's how I'm reading his diabolic sort of strategy, which really cannot work. It
I'm
just
seeing
can't.
he's implementing Doge so that government is not smaller, government is more powerful. It's fewer people, but it's more powerful. It's actually more in your life. It's more telling you what to do. You agree with Trump, or you're in, I sort of look at this as like Trump 2.0 is
Yikes!
like the
That's a
retribution tour.
that's a dark.
I'm
That's
sorry.
going dark. Oh
Yeah,
my
this is the
goodness.
retribution tour.
Like, I haven't gone that far. I haven't
Okay,
gone
good.
that far. Yeah. That's that. Well, you go to America often, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm back and forth all the time. All the
So I'm
time.
spending my sabbatical at Texas A&M. So
I was just in
if
Austin
if
for
if
South
you're
by.
telling me that Big Brother will be watching me from now on, I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
if I'm going to go.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that ship has sailed. I think that ship has sailed. But I'll be in Vegas this weekend, and I was in Austin like 2 weeks ago for South
Oh,
by.
okay.
So
Right.
there all the time. There all the time. Okay, wait. Back to Canada. Lovely, lovely Canada. We
Yeah, we
understand.
need the love. We need the love.
Oh, everybody loves Canada. Everybody loves Canada. Don't worry. So, okay, obviously agricultural country, but what are we seeing in terms of like biotech innovation? What innovation is crossing your threshold that you think is going to really impact the world?
Like in terms of in terms of proteins or in just
Food,
generally?
anything in the food chain, even ag tech, like if you've got precision watering or AI driven X, Y, or Z, or
Well, I
you
mean, the
know,
big focus in the last, I'd say, 2 years in Canada has been the middle mile, to be honest. I mean, it's super unsexy and it's obscure. It's up the food chain. Nobody sees it. But I've actually visited three state-of-the-art distribution centers,
oh,
and I've been impressed. Like, it's the stuff that you
why?
would see probably in the US that you're now seeing in Canada, where you have, like, let's say, for example, you have like a distribution center supporting 1,500 grocery stores.
Yeah,
Okay. That's the middle mile right
yeah,
there. And they're able to fulfill an order to support a store within 6 hours. Not one human being would have touched anything.
amazing, right? Yeah, yeah, just
And that's
amazing.
the that's the legacy of COVID. I think that really a lot of our major grocers like Loblaws and Sobeys and Metro, those are our main players in Canada. They've decided to really step it up logistically. And I'm a logistics guy. I'm in food distribution, so these things like really gets me excited. Wow, I was really impressed by some of the stuff that I've been seeing. And of course, as you know, AI is everywhere. It's certainly in the US, but it's in Canada right now. Basically going through the different levels of the supply chain. A lot of companies are implementing different systems, predictive analytics, and we've talked about food waste. If there is one way to actually reduce food waste is by using predictive analytics as much as possible in
Mhm.
AI to predict demand, aligning supply and demand as much as possible. And so we're seeing more of these things and more digitized pricing at retail, wholesale as well. So there's a lot of focus on these things right now, I would say, much more so than before.
And what about things like precision fermentation, taking genes from an animal, maybe growing it in lettuce or growing, and letting lettuce be the host or spinach or broccoli or whatever, just some kind of vegetable ends up being the host rather than a medium. Any of this kind of stuff?
Canada is a lagger on that.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, so we have Remilk. You know the company Remilk.
Yes.
So it's been approved in Canada since
Great.
last year. So for dairy, now I actually the CEO was actually on my podcast. I think it was 18 months ago, and I don't know exactly how successful they are in Canada.
I think they have a ways to go.
They probably have a ways to go. You
Yeah.
probably have information that I don't have, but I would say I don't know. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how they're penetrating the market at all. Dairy is a sensitive issue in Canada, as you probably know,
Yes.
because of our supply management system, which is incredibly archaic. But when you think about cellular agriculture, for example, there's not much going on in Canada. There's different pockets of like I think there's 16 or 17 startups in Canada, but on the regulatory side, there's just zero
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
Zero.
Although cellular agriculture, just making that distinction for the listeners. So cellular agriculture is where you take an entire cell and you're trying to, let's say, grow a steak or
In the
grow a chicken
bioreactor.
breast,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But this would be just taking the genes and maybe growing the casein, like the genes for casein. So not the whole cell of the animal, but just maybe like the genes for casein.
Oh,
And
okay,
then you
okay.
can grow the casein and then you have what you need to make cheese without
Right,
the animal. So then you've got like dairy without the animal or cheese without the animal.
right.
And you're seeing different hosts for these things. You can grow them in medium, but you can also grow them like in vegetables
Is
themselves.
it being considered in the US right now?
I don't know where it is on regulatory, but definitely this
Okay.
innovation is happening that then you would take this gene and implant it into, let's say, lettuce, and it would grow with the lettuce. So it would
That's
just
awesome.
naturally, it's just awesome. It really is
Yeah,
awesome.
we're not there yet. Like we're
Oh,
not even.
Canada.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. Of course, the government has been prorogued for a while in Canada, so we're just in waiting for an election.
Right,
So
as well. You also
there's.
have your political troubles.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, very right, yeah.
oh yeah.
Okay. Well, any predictions for the sector? So now you are truly on the agricultural end, but still you have your lens to the food systems transformation world. I'll say a diversified proteins world. Any kind of projections in what we're going to see take hold and take place out there, but also
Well,
timelines
yeah.
to change.
The so as a lab, we've been using AI for what 15 years now to forecast and stuff, and our numbers right now aren't necessarily good for inflation, like food
Right.
inflation. With the tariffs, everything else that's going on, we actually believe that inflation could reach 5% in Canada by August.
Of this year.
Yes, and so that's a problem.
Hmm.
Especially when it comes to proteins. And so we're certainly following that very closely. And we saw that a few years ago with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and
Sure.
everything that went up. It just changed the psyche of the consumer.
Yeah.
Like it changed everything. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, to be honest, about prices and what's going on at the grocery store. And so that's the one thing that I would say that is bothering me a little bit because of the shenanigans going on in the White House, and because it's impacted the entire world.
Yeah.
If you cut trade, everything's slowing down right now,
You see
and
how
tariffs are
quickly
going.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. You see how quickly you get from food to national security. When
Yeah,
people don't have food and they're starting to be out of their price range, they get angry and they get unsettled and people start moving and things start happening and it just quickly gets destabilized.
yeah, no, exactly. So there's that I do see this as a headwind in the next 12 months for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think you're not alone in that. And here I thought 2025 maybe was going to be
smooth
the
sailing.
year of, bringing down interest rates because the Fed had
Yeah,
started to bring down interest rates in the US. I thought we were
yeah.
going to continue that
So
trajectory.
our rates are dropping in Canada
Oh, there you
and in the
go.
US. I mean, your economy is much stronger than ours, and so we're going into this trade war in a very weak
Vulnerable.
position economically.
Ooh, I
Yep.
see. And how does this implicate the average person? Average middle class?
Well, there's some job growth, but wages aren't necessarily going up all
No,
that much.
eaten
As you
away with
know,
inflation.
legal immigration has been an issue in Canada. Our GDP per capita is not increasing. It's increasing a little bit, but not as much as the U.S. There's some issues around capital investments. Nobody's really investing, really.
Right. Same
Uh,
here. But
yeah.
that's why we look to government things. This is why I take so seriously this Department of Defense and also the Department of Energy, just in a much smaller way. Department of Energy just put out 3 grants for food innovation, totaling $10 million in total, so not that much.
Oh,
Whereas Department of Defense totaled around 12 to 24 million, with the possibility of 100 million more for each of the 12.
wow.
So the first grant was 1 to 2 million for the 12, so somewhere between 12 and 24 million. With the follow on, after they give them the plan of what they're going to do with money, 1.2 billion can go to those
Wow.
12. So, we're talking about real money
Yeah.
that I take to be a market signal of, and the US isn't going to be the only government that starts investing this way with more and more trade. I got to think, as we said, other countries are going to do the same. So
Hmm.
this could impact the rate at which food systems transformation takes hold. And I'm going to give it, between 28 and 30 is when we're really going to lock down on like everyone's going to talk about it, not just you and me. So it's not going to be the insider track anymore. Everyone's going to be like, oh, things are, I tried this new kind of food, or, more and more founders, more and more money, ventures
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
back, the public markets, My ETF is through the roof. You know, this is what this is how I see it, everybody.
If the world actually if the world were more economically literate, I think we'd be in better shape.
It's tricky though, you know. I say the same thing about food literacy. I feel
How
for
many times I
compliance.
had to explain to people what tariffs were?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
seriously, this is the kind of literacy I'm talking about here.
I don't know what to say about that. What do we do? What do we do about that? But what's most frightening to me is the fact that they don't know what it is. It doesn't keep people from arguing about it.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what they're even arguing about, but they have a
But things
definite
are so
strong opinion.
politicized these days that it's hard to get people to reason and to make an effort to understand the issues. That's
Okay,
the
wait a
thing.
minute. If you're telling me that reasonable Canada is having trouble being reasonable, the world is in a very tricky spot.
I have I have a lot of friends in the US, and frankly, there's a lot of reasonable people. It's just they probably don't have a voice right now because there's a lot of noise in the US. That's the thing.
Yeah,
And so,
there's
but the beauty of it all is that we're making friends in Europe now. We're making friends
Yes.
in Mexico. We're making friends in Brazil. I'm in Brazil in a couple of months. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to travel more. We just need a couple of visas, but that's okay.
You'll get them. You'll get them. Oh
Exactly.
my God, exciting times. Okay, as we wrap up here, a couple quickie, maybe personal questions for you. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
Geez. The share of Apple. I will buy. My goodness, I don't know. Like, I'm having a pretty good life, to be honest. I'm just taking it a day at a time, and you know, we have a lovely life here. I don't know. Like, we've made some good decisions. Yeah. What about you?
I mean, I think what I wish I knew 10 years ago that I know now is to never squash my voice, you know, just to really be out there with my voice. And I got to that maybe too later than I would, you know, in hindsight, later than I would have liked.
Right.
So I really started, I want to say in 2018, using my voice. And for what I believe in.
Because you've been in this business for how long now?
2018.
Okay. So it's been, so 7 years. I've been doing this for 25 years. So,
my word.
But I do a lot of, so I've actually shifted about 10 years ago into consulting, working in the private sector, which made me a better academic, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to.
This.
Yeah.
I do a lot of consulting to the private sector. I'm sure we've overlapped here. In fact, I'm happy to be a resource for you if you need it. I work with the private sector, and I'm so inspired by the private sector because I think they're really the ones with the distribution channels, the global work teams, the ad budgets.
They understand what's going on.
Totally. If you want to change food system transformation, start working with these folks, because as much as I like the startups and it's sweet to have a big dream, most likely they're either out of business on their own volition, or they've been bought up by a company that puts them out of business, or they overvaluate themselves and do a very wonky IPO and embarrass themselves and kind of crawl out of business. So, I mean, you know, really, I'm all about working with the large public companies, and I do a lot of this consulting.
That's good.
It's good stuff. Great. Okay, so you're having a day and it doesn't go exactly as you would like. What is the phrase you tell yourself to get yourself back in the groove?
Panic a minute and go back to work.
Oh, you give yourself 1 minute to panic.
And if things go well, I celebrate for a minute and go back to work.
Oh, I love it.
That's my father's saying. That's what he said to me, and it stuck. Yeah.
This is similar to something I say to myself: nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky. I love it. Yeah.
That's another one. That's a good one.
It's a good one. You can use it. It's okay.
No copyright on that one? Okay, good.
No, it's okay. And then my last question, same day. You're still not going your way. You're running around like crazy. You don't have time for lunch. What is your go-to snack?
Oh, it's yogurt.
No.
Sorry.
Find a better one. Find a better go-to snack. Okay, I'm going to give you some. What about peanut butter and apples?
That's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, nuts, peanut butter, apples. Yeah. Actually, one of my daughters is actually sick home today, and I was taking care of her, and that's exactly what I gave her. apples
Oh,
with peanut
peanut
butter.
butter.
So there
Yeah,
you
so
go.
good. It's a really delicious one. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Sylvain. Am I saying it right?
Yeah,
Sylvain, right?
yeah.
Sylvain. Okay. Sylvain, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, thank you so much for being with us. Love Dalhousie University. I think maybe most listeners have never heard of Dalhousie University. The website is dal.ca. If they want to get to your work at Dalhousie University, is there a better website that we can give them? Or is that just go to the
It's the
general and find it?
website, and you'll find the lab's website there for
Oh,
sure. Yeah,
okay. So the
yeah.
Agri-Food Analytics Lab is going to be there at dal.ca. They're using AI for predictive models about supply and demand, specifically as it relates to agripulses and diversified
That's
proteins. Ooh, there we go.
that's the report we publish every year. Is that
Canada's Food Price Report in
yeah?
2005. Okay,
That's the 15th edition. So we're 4 universities involved here. So Dal,
wonderful.
UBC, Guelph, and Saskatchewan. So yeah,
Great.
and University of Alberta is joining us this year. So
That's wonderful. So if you want to get your hands on that price guide coming out of all 4 universities, but Dalhousie is the one
little
we're
pet
focusing on today.
project for you. When I'm at Texas A&M for my sabbatical, we're going to be looking at launching the United States food price report. So the American
Great.
version of this. So yeah.
Great. So let's hope
Yeah.
you don't get yourself kicked out of the US. That will be a great report. Can't
I
wait
hope
to
I
see
get
it.
I hope I get a visa.
There you go.
I'm wondering if they're going to allow me in at the border.
Keep me posted on how this goes. These are crazy times. We've
I
taken
know.
it day by day, but we panic for a minute and then we get back to work.
To
So,
work.
everybody panic for a minute and get back to work. I will see all of you, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, next week. You guys, it's been great, and I'll see you next week. Sylvain, don't go away. I'll talk to you in a minute. Everybody else, bye, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.